So, this is the last week for our love and relationship series. And wow, I have been absolutely blown away with all of the nuggets that these ladies have shared. There's been so much wisdom, so many life applications and lessons to be learned. I hope that you guys loved it as much as I have. Also, a reminder that this is the last few days for our Galentine sale over on unashamedlyu.com. We have up to half off on everything on our website, including the private coaching sessions. And I have to let you guys know, we just opened up a group session chat for everyone currently in our coaching sessions, and it has been so much fun. Let's be honest, building a business can be kind of lonely, even when you know what you're calling. But this is what the Unashamedly You community is for, to bring community to women going after their God-given calling. So if you'd like more information on the group sessions and chats, just send us an email at uyteam@unashamedlyu.com, and our team would love to share more info with you. Hello and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. This month is all about love and relationships, and I am so honored to be bringing on the guest that we have today. Honestly, she did a live on social media a few months back, and it completely changed my outlook on things. It changed how I looked at things, and it made me make some different decisions that week than I probably would have made before. So when preparing for this month and deciding who was going to speak, who was going to be on, I kept telling my husband, if we could get Sister Kathy Copeland on for this topic, it would be a complete dream. And here you are today making my dreams come true. I am so grateful that you've taken time to be on here, Sister Copeland. For those that may not know you, go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sister Jamie. It is an honor to be asked to be a part of this. And before I tell you a little bit about myself, I did want to say that I want to put in a little plug for your podcast because I think it's awesome. I haven't listened to all of the episodes, but I've listened to quite a few of them. And they've just been very encouraging, very inspiring. And I think it's so needed for lots of reasons. But one is it just brings us all closer. A lot of people may not ever get to sit down with Sister Mandy Holmes or Sister Johnette or whoever, but they can listen to them talk from their heart for 30, 40 minutes, whatever. And it's just so encouraging. And what I listened to a few weeks ago, I listened to your interview with Bishop Holmes. I had just pulled through Starbucks and I decided I was going to take a few minutes to myself, which is a little trick that young moms of kids know. The only time you get is maybe to sit in a parking lot. So that's not why I did it. I guess I was just in the habit, but I just wanted to relax, eat my egg bites. And I thought, I'm going to listen to the interview with Bishop Holmes. I just thought how encouraging he is about prayer and all of that. I'm telling you, about 3 minutes into that thing, I was sobbing. I was a mess and sitting in that parking lot holding my coffee and my egg bites. I was having to grab napkins. When he started talking about his mom, it was very touching. So
I was definitely right there with you, sobbing the whole time he was
I can
talking. I thought, I
imagine.
don't know if I'm going to be able to get my breath to say anything.
I know. It was really, yeah, I felt like I could feel it coming through the airwaves there. But anyway, yes, for people who may not know me, my name is Kathy Copeland. I live in Beaufort, Georgia. I'm originally from the state of Colorado in the Mile High city of Denver, raised there my whole life, but I've lived in Beaufort, Georgia for about 30 years now. My husband passed away last May. My husband was an evangelist for 21 years, and I traveled with him for 11 of those 21 years. And we had a wonderful time. And then God brought us to a little town called Beaufort, Georgia, and took a church that had been in existence 3 years. And that was in 1993. So it's been 30 years now. So a few years ago, my husband unfortunately was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. I want to just get this part out of the way because I'm going to try not to break down at any part if possible. But anyway, it's just a horrible form of dementia. Not that any type is good, but that was in 2019 that he was diagnosed. And so, he resigned from the church, and we're very blessed in that our oldest son was voted into the church, felt God's call very strongly to become the pastor. And I'm just so thankful that it worked out that way so I can still be here. Otherwise, it might not have worked out for me to be here. But I have 4 sons. We're super close, always have been. I'm very blessed. And they are all living for God, involved in the work of God in some capacity or another. 3 of them are preachers. And anyway, I'm just a very blessed woman. I have 3 wonderful daughters-in-law. They're like my girls, and I'm so thankful for them. Every day I thank God for them. And then I have 4 grandsons. So it's a funny deal because I was raised with 4 brothers. I always wanted a sister, never had one. And then I had 4 boys, wanted a daughter, but anyway, it wasn't meant to be. And now I have 4 grandsons. So if we ever get a granddaughter, it's going to be a deal, I'm telling you. But I really need one because I have so many awesome books that I've saved for my granddaughter. All my Little House on the Prairie series that I had growing up, my Little Women, Little Men, all my Louisa May Alcott books, just so many great books. But anyway, I'm rambling now. So that's pretty much who I am.
You'll get that granddaughter, I am sure, at some point. So if y'all are listening to this, Sarah, come
Oh,
on now.
Brianne. It's Brianne, my newest daughter-in-law. She was one of 3 girls, so we're pinning our hopes on her.
Okay, it's all up to you, Brian. And I love your family too so much. You guys have always been so special to us and to my family. I had all sisters and I had all girl cousins.
Oh, wow.
And so Ezra was the first boy born on my mom's side in 60 something years.
Oh, my word.
And one of my cousins had the first grandson, and Ezra and him, they're a year apart. So we didn't get any boys for a really long time. And I was really surprised with how wild boys are. So I'm really looking
Yes.
forward to a
Well, I didn't
couple.
get this gray hair being a pastor's wife. I got it being the mother of 4 boys.
I'm looking forward to some boy mom tips here. So I know that this topic is personal for you and that you're very passionate about helping wives and relationships. But before we get started on marriage relationships, let's switch roles here really quickly and talk to some of the single ladies that may be listening. What are some things that you would say to someone that is looking for a spouse?
Sure, I would love to talk about that for a few minutes. And of course, I believe this is geared mostly to the young ladies, but in case there are any young men that listen to your podcast, I have a word or two to say to them as well. But in general, I'll tell young people or whoever, anybody that might be looking for a spouse or thinking that a spouse is somewhere in their future, I'll tell you what to not look for. It's good looks, charisma. Those things are nice, nothing wrong with them, but you don't look for them. It's so crazy to me to think that of all the wonderful qualities that a girl or a guy could look for in a future spouse, good looks is just, it really shouldn't even be on the list, or it should be so far down the list because guess what? We don't always keep good looks, or some of us don't necessarily have them to start with. But I'm just saying, you could marry someone that looks like a model. Really, I know guys, they could be pot-bellied, premature balding, and all they want is a model. And I've tried to talk to some of them through the years. Let's get a little deeper here than just looking for a model. Let's not be shallow. What to look for? Watch people. If you're with this person in a group situation, watch how they interact with other people. Notice how they interact with the waiter or the waitress at a restaurant. Watch how they deal with those less fortunate or less intelligent than them. Do they treat them with kindness and respect? If you start to see things with somebody, whether you're just liking them or you're dating them, and you start to see or feel little red flags, 99% of the time, those red flags are from an instinct that God put in us. I don't know, there's other words for it. I just call it a gut feeling or something. Now, it's not always from God, but most of the time it's just some inborn wisdom, gut feeling He's put in us. So we don't want to ignore red flags. I talked to a friend not recently. She's in a terrible situation in her marriage. Her husband has a horrible temper. And I finally asked her, did you not see any of this when you guys were dating? They had dated for a year, and she said, yeah, I saw it. I saw it several times. But she thought, and many times, especially a young woman can think, he'll change when we get married. I can help him change. I'm just telling you, it does not work like that. So if you're starting to see red flags in a relationship, and of course, you want to talk to your pastor, talk to your parents, whoever, elders in your life. Don't just go by what I'm saying. But my advice most of the time, if someone's starting to have red flags, is not to try to work through it, is just to drop that person like a hot potato. That may not be the best advice, but I've definitely told several young people that just drop him, drop her like a hot potato, because you just don't want to ignore red flags. And I think the only other thing, I mean, there's a lot I could say, but of course we have time constraints, but I already said, guys, raise your standards to something more than a supermodel. You want someone would be a wonderful mother and faithful to you, faithful to church. That's what I forgot to mention. Are they faithful to church? If they're not, forget it. You shouldn't even date them one time if they can't even get out of bed on Sunday mornings. Are they faithful on their job? Are they faithful in their giving? You have a right to know these things before you get emotionally involved at all with someone. And of course, you want approval from your pastor, obviously. But the other thing I was just going to say for girls is don't overlook the nerds. Don't overlook the quiet, awkward guys. Don't overlook the overweight guys, because I'm just telling you, sometimes they are the best, most wonderful, sweetest husbands in the world. Have enough depth to your character that you're not looking for a supermodel either. Look beyond all that, and you can find an awesome person and have a wonderful life. So I hope that wasn't too much, but anyway, those are just my thoughts, random thoughts.
That's so good and so true. Like you said, sometimes I'll see guys and girls and they look a certain way, but then they're looking for a supermodel, like you said, and you're like, you're not a supermodel.
Go
So,
look in the mirror, buddy.
so why are you looking for one, you know? So yes, and age gets the best of all of us. I know my daughter,
Absolutely.
she's talked about people talking about how skinny she is. I said, wait, sister, I said, one day you'll be 30 and have three kids and you'll be wishing
Exactly.
that they said you were super skinny. Used to happen to all
Yeah,
of us.
everything changes. Yeah.
You've been a pastor's wife, like you said, for years. And I know that you have many years of counseling, marriage, and relationships. And we know the church is as strong as our homes. So
Right.
honestly, this is more than just a good podcast on having good marriages. This really stems back to having good churches. And strong relationships create a strong church. So it's imperative, it's important for us ladies to make sure that we're doing all that we can to have the best marriages and to make the most of it. So talk to us a little bit on how that we can be better wives and give us a little bit of advice on some things that you've learned over the years.
Okay. All righty. I would love to do that. And in fact, when you texted me and said that you would like for me to come on this month in relationships, I was thrilled because I just like to talk about things like that. But I don't know the things I have on my heart and I feel like saying, because you had shared with me that you would be asking this about marital relationships. I've made a few notes, but I don't know that it's really what someone is expecting to hear, and it might rub some people wrong. And remember, you might do a disclaimer every so often, because just because a guest says something doesn't mean you're responsible. It doesn't necessarily stand for Sister Jamie or even for your church, but I'm pretty sure that your pastor would be fine with what I'm about to say. But I just want to give that disclaimer because I just,
We brought you on here for a reason. We want to hear
okay,
what you have to say.
okay. First of all, it's just so basic, but try not to fuss a lot in a marriage. Some people have been raised that way, and it's their first instinct and how to deal with a problem is just to lash out, or maybe not just lash out, but just to pop off and say something. And that's really not the best or the most mature way, certainly, to handle any sort of altercation or misunderstanding or anything. Fussing and fighting and arguing should really be, I don't want to say it should be rare, because obviously there's times you have to deal with things in a marriage, but you can have a marriage where you don't ever have a knockdown, drag out, blowout. That's totally possible. And I know I've said this to people before and also in marriage seminars and such, but I was raised in a home, wasn't a Christian home, but I had wonderful parents, and it was such a peaceful, happy home. And they were both very busy. Who's not busy, right? But my dad was a college professor and taught graduate classes, and mom worked at an elementary school. Anyway, they had a lot going on, but never, ever do I remember my parents raising their voice in anger. I know they had disagreements, but my brothers and I were never privy to any altercations or anything like that. So that's really been my example. And plus, I was married too. I didn't get to really finish saying what I was going to say about my husband, because I don't want to get too broken up, but he was just such an amazing person, and he was so calm and sweet, and it was just really hard to fuss with him. Like I would have to really work at it and be really mad. And even then, the thing is, Sister Jamie, people need to remember it always takes two people to have a fuss, right? One person can rant and rave, but it's not a full-fledged argument until two are involved. So the thing about it, this may sound so unfair, but really, it's not really the person that starts the argument that has the power, but it's the other one, whether they're the innocent party or not. Even the person starting the fuss may be way off the mark or getting mad for no reason. That's not my point. My point is how you deal with it. If it's your spouse that's starting something, fair or unfair, the ball is now in your court, and how you deal with it can make all the difference in the world throughout your entire marriage. We know the Bible says a soft answer turns away wrath. That is a great scripture. Some women need to put that on their refrigerator, their closet door, their forehead, whatever. A soft answer can turn away wrath. And I'm not talking about a sarcastic little, okay, whatever you want. I'm talking about sincerely saying, okay, honey, I know you're upset. I hear you. Try to explain to me what is the problem. I want to try to see if we can work through. There's 1,000 ways to work through it, but none of those 1,000 ways are raising your voice or popping off back to your spouse and saying, yeah, well, you did such and such. So that would be one of the main things that I would like to say. Be quick to apologize to your spouse, to your children, if you're in the wrong. If you're not, whatever. But even if there's a chance you might have been wrong, swallow that pride and just say, I'm really sorry. I don't know how many times I said that throughout the years, because unfortunately, most of the time I was the one in the wrong. I did jump to conclusions too quickly. And it was because of my husband's steady, calm, sweet nature that I was able to calm down and realize, wait a minute, I think maybe I did misinterpret the way you said this, whatever. But there were many times I would even go back to my kids and say, I'm really sorry that I handled this way. I think I'm belaboring the point here. Spend time with your husband. That's a big deal. I don't know if that's what you're talking about on that deal I had done sitting on the front porch that day, but I had just felt it so strong that, and it's a regret I have in my life. We're not supposed to live with regrets, but I do regret that I didn't spend more time with my husband. Now, I couldn't in the earlier years when my boys were little, but when they were older, practically grown, I didn't have to be there. It's just I'm a terrible hermit, homebody. And so I just didn't want to go with him a lot of times if he was going to preach at camp meeting or conference. And he basically got to where he quit asking me. He was always sweet about it. He knew I was busy. I was very involved in the church. I taught at our Christian school for many years. I had 100 irons in the fire like any wife, but it was just an excuse because I'm a homebody. And so I shared that on that. I don't know when I've ever received so many texts and DMs not just from the wives, but from husbands too, thanking me. Obviously, I wasn't the only one with this problem. So wives, if you haven't heard it, I think it's on my little Instagram, but you have to scroll way back. But anyway, I just encourage you to spend time with your husband when you can. I know everybody's busy. Even if he's out working on the car, okay? If you can make time, okay, you're cooking dinner, whatever, just put it on low, pull up a chair and go out and sit and visit with him or watch him and admire him while he's working on that car for about 30 minutes. That can do wonders for that man. Man, there's just so many things you could do, but if he works around not too far from the house or whatever, and you may be a working woman, but if you guys can meet for lunch, just whatever. Again, there are so many different scenarios, but you married your husband, you didn't marry your children. Our children are so important, but I'm sure you've all heard the little saying, your children one day will be gone, and then it's just going to be you and your husband again. And then what? If you've spent a couple of decades only focusing on your kids and your husband's just off there about number 15 on the list, there's going to be some problems reconnecting. So it's better to do everything you can to stay close during every moment and every year of your marriage. This is such a little thing, but express your appreciation to your spouse. And again, if there's any married man listening, remember everything I'm saying, just switch wife and husband, and this can all apply to you as well. Because obviously there's husbands that need to spend more time with their wives. This definitely works both ways, but I'm just focusing on the ladies tonight. But express your appreciation to your husband when he does little things. If he ever empties the dishwasher, I understand. I've heard it so many times. Why should I thank him for it? I do it all the time and he never thanks me. I get that. But there's just so much more to it. I guess I'm pretty old school. And I think a husband should help around the house. He should help with the kids, especially if the mother works outside of the home full time. But having said that, if you are blessed to be able to be a stay-at-home mom or maybe just work part-time, and even if not, I can't really help the fact that the Bible says we're the keeper of the home. It doesn't say the woman is the keeper of the home unless she's working a full-time job, in which case she can just nag her husband and make sure they cut everything exactly 50%. I don't know. Everybody has to find that balance, and pastors can help couples sometimes find that balance. But what's wrong with saying thank you if the guy empties your dishwasher? You don't have to keep tabulation on all these things. This is not a contest. This is a partnership. And so I would rather say thank you instead of nothing. And then if he makes a comment, I emptied the dishwasher for you, instead of some smart comment like, yeah, well, I do it twice a day. Why do that when you can just say, thank you so much, honey? Or if he loads it and he does everything backwards, you're going to go around and switch the plates the other way. That's fine, but don't do it in front of him. Just like you wouldn't with your kid. Hopefully, if they've colored outside of the lines, you're not going to go back in and correct every mistake. You're going to appreciate it for what it is. And really, that's the way we should be with our spouses. And I guess I'll just end with this. There's plenty more we could say, but again, we do have time restraints, and I'm very aware of that. This sounds funny, and some wives may not like this, but really think about things in your marriage that bug you, and by in your marriage with your spouse. Okay, things that just bug you. And then really take some time to think about it and think, can I, in any way, shape, or form, change this annoying habit that my husband has? For example, let me think of an example. He's always scratching his nose, or he's always hiking up his pants and tightening his belt. Just things that most people probably never notice, but you certainly do every time he does it. Okay. Or maybe he chews with his mouth open. Now there's a deal, or talks with his mouth open, with food in his mouth or something. It sounds so silly, but it's kind of a big deal. So, or he leaves his socks laying around. There's an example I've used before. Okay. You can nag that man from now until kingdom come, but there's a very good chance he's not going to change. Now, he may eventually start picking up his socks because he's so sick of hearing you nag. Should he be leaving his socks late? No, he should put them in the dirty clothes. But some guys don't. It doesn't mean they're a bad, terrible person. Maybe their mom always picked up for them and they're ready, moving on in their mind to the next thing. Maybe they've chewed their nails their whole life, and maybe they don't realize that they scratch their ears every time they're nervous or get under stress. Think about these things and just really take some time. Is this really worth me getting angry about, upset about? It is stressing me. Is it really worth it for me to get so stressed out every time I see a sock on the floor? A man leaving a sock on the floor does not represent the fact that he does not care for you or thinks you're his servant. It's not. It just means he didn't think about it. Like, that's just not his deal. Okay. So I would highly recommend letting go of that. And when you see socks on the floor, just pick them up. Just forget about it. It's not worth your time and energy. And again, is it right or wrong? Is that a cop out to do that? Shouldn't he be blah, blah, whatever? But it would make your life less stressful. If he's a nail biter, yeah, you could try to in the night, try to put stuff on his nails where it tastes bitter. You could, give him little dirty looks in church when he's doing it. You could do 100 things and probably he would still do it. It's better to take that little bad habit, because you've got some too, and take that bad habit of your husband in your mind, tie it to a balloon in your mind and let it float off, and just don't let it bother you again. And if it starts to bother you, get a visual of that balloon taking that off and just say, I love this man too much. His good qualities so outweigh the fact that he scratches his ears or that once in a while he talks with his mouth full. I'm just going to forget it and not let it bother me. That was a long way to say just let go of some things. It's just not worth it. You got a good man, be thankful for it.
I love that visual that you said with the balloon and talking about the dishwasher. I hope Matt's listening to this for my part, because he's like a perfectionist and I just load it and I feel like I'm
Oh,
loading it correctly, but he thinks it needs to be like as many dishes you can possibly cram. There's like no spaces left and everything's perfect. And I'm like, I'm just trying to get this in here because I only had about 5 minutes to load it.
yeah, that's the way I am too. I don't like to pack them too much anyway, because I want to make sure they get clean, but everybody's different in a dishwasher loading.
But it's funny that it would even be a deal that you would
Oh,
even.
yeah, absolutely. But it is for a lot of couples. I guarantee a lot of people are going to connect with that.
And it was that Instagram live. So if you guys want to go on there and listen to that, it was so good. One of the things that you had talked about, talking about going with your husband, was that he wanted you to go like on grocery store trips and just different
Yeah,
things. And you just felt like that you didn't always have the time. And my
yeah,
husband looks at land and sometimes it's an hour and 2 hours away. And he wants me to ride with him. And at the time, right before I watched this Instagram story, he was wanting me to go with them. And I'm thinking in my head, I'd already pretty much said no, because I was thinking of all the things that I have to do, all the places that I had to go, stuff I
yeah,
had going on. And then I thought, what would it hurt? All these things that I want to do, I can do tomorrow. It's not
absolutely.
like I have anything going on tomorrow that I couldn't push this stuff off for. And one day, like you said, you're going to wish that you could go on those long rides. And I was glad I did.
Good for you, you smart girl.
Anyone that knows you knows that you love to have a good time and that you love your family. I completely enjoy watching all of your Instagram things that you put on. And then sometimes whenever you put your little stories with your grandsons, I am cracking up every time. They're so funny. They're so good.
Thank-
But what are some things that you've implemented to make sure that you're able to live life to the fullest?
Yeah, I think things like that, maybe they should be conscious, but sometimes they just come naturally to you, because I don't want to waste my life. I want to enjoy my life. I wanted to, and I did enjoy my kids. And again, young mothers with young kids, I know they've all heard it, enjoy it while you can. They're going to be out of the house. Well, I already had that in my mind when my boys were growing up. And I don't know why. I don't know if someone had pounded that into me, or but I feel like I was really able to enjoy my kids. And a lot of moms are, but then there's moms who are just so busy and in such a hurry that they just they don't really learn to enjoy those moments. And I think, let's see, you had Sister Mandy Holmes on here talking about some ways to make memories with your kids and things like that. I don't think I got to hear all of that. I need to go back and check, but of course, she's so great anyway, some of the stuff she posts about that. But it's not really like when your kids grow up and the memories they're going to have of you and their home and the home life. Surprisingly, it's not really the trip to Disneyland necessarily. It's not the big trip to a resort. It's not any of that stuff most of the time. Or even if you're adult listeners, you think back on your childhood, if you were blessed to have a good childhood, it's not any big major thing. It's just home. It's just sitting on the couch with everybody there and everybody telling funny stories about something dumb they did that week or something. It's just sitting around the table, like they say, family dinner. We always had, and by we, when I was a kid, my whole life, even though my parents were extremely busy, we always had dinner together and we were forced. They literally made me talk about my day because I have not always really been a big talker. That may be hard for some people to believe since I'm talking so much right now. But in general, I'm not the one in the middle of the conversation just running my mouth or whatever. And especially growing up, I just wasn't interested in talking that much with my friends. But at home, that's another story. But anyway, I was forced to talk about my day. So that must be where some of that came from because we just tried to do that stuff at home. I think I might have said this too on one of my Instagram deals, but there's something really important and it's called contentment. It's like such a major deal. And until I had really felt to talk about contentment to our ladies, and then also I spoke somewhere else, I don't remember where about it. But anyway, I started looking into it. I was really surprised at how many Bible verses there are about that. I mean, we all know the one where Paul said, I'm found in whatever state I am therewith to be content, or however exactly it goes, which is pretty interesting, even right there, that he used that word of all the things this great, brilliant man of God could have said. He's learned. What has he learned? What has he learned? To be content. That must be a big deal. But then there's the scripture, godliness with contentment. It's got to be a part of it. Is what? It's great gain. It's this incredible thing. It's not just something nice to have. It's great gain. So anyway, so I did a talk on that. And basically, at least as far as I was able to figure out, it's so easy to be content. The key to being content is just thankfulness and gratefulness. They go hand in hand. If you're not thankful or grateful, you will never be content. It's just so simple. I just couldn't believe it when I started really thinking about it. So I would say the more you can learn to be thankful for whatever stage of life you're in. You got kids running wild, climbing the walls, 3-year-olds swinging from the chandeliers. You can laugh, fall down the floor laughing, but I'm telling you, enjoy it. Enjoy it. Be thankful for it because guess what? Like I've already said, they are not going to be 3 and 5 for very long. They're going to be 15 and 17, and then they're going to be 19 and walking out of your life. So enjoy, be thankful for every stage of your life, and that will carry you through so many things. And yeah, if you can cut down on stress levels in your life, that brings meaning to every day. The more peaceful your life can be. Okay, you did an interview with my friend Shelley, The Goodness
The
Margin.
goodness margin. Yes, we
Yeah,
did
and
a
that was so
podcast with her.
amazing. Yeah, I put a plug in for that and for her Instagram. She has some great ideas, but the whole point of it, and she'll bring that home every so often, is that she kind of practices a minimalist lifestyle, not major minimalist. I think there's a name for what she does. It's like I don't know. Anyway, but the whole point is to bring more peace and stability to your home life. And I love that. Not that I am a minimalist in any way, shape, or form. If step into my house and you will agree. But just lower your stress levels. There's so much you can learn on your own on cutting stress levels. There's basic stuff like most Americans are extremely low on magnesium. Magnesium can help decrease stress levels. I mean, that's just like such a basic thing. But talk to your doctor about that first. I don't want to get in any trouble here, but think about things in your life again, like how we talked about with your spouse. Okay. Really focus on things. Okay. This gets on my nerves. What am I going to do about it? Okay. Same thing with your home life to bring some peace and more stability, I guess you could call it. Think of the things. It's usually the little things, the little foxes that spoil the vine, right? The little things get on your nerve, but they add up. This is so minor, but yet it used to really bug me that most kitchen trash cans are 13-gallon trash cans, right? That's a standard. So then you get these 13-gallon trash bags and they're always falling down into the trash can. And it used to get on my last nerve. And I'd buy these, I tried taping it. I couldn't pull it up tightly and tie it around because then it wouldn't touch the bottom. I bought one of these giant rubber bands. This is years ago. My kids are little, but for whatever reason, I just let it really stress me out. And then I'd be trying to dump some old soup that was in the fridge too long or whatever. Then I just got this mess. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Then I sat there and thought about it. I'm like, why am I letting this stress me out so much? And then it's ding, 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 buy bigger trash bags, Kathy. They don't make 15 or 16-gallon trash bags. The next jump is 30-gallon, okay, and 33-gallon. Maybe somebody could find a different size. I don't know, but I've never found one. And it's more expensive, but I don't care. I buy 30-gallon trash bags to this day, and my life is so happy when it comes to putting trash in the trash can. You know, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I remember when my boys were younger, it used to get on my last nerve when they put their clothes in the dirty clothes hamper and I'd get ready to wash and I would tell them, boys, can't you just please, when you pull your t-shirt off or your shirts, do they have to all be inside out? Every sleeve's inside out. It's all just mangled. And I'm like, can't you just take the time to make my life easier? Just pull your arms out, but maybe even button a shirt. Why can't you guys do this for me? I was just like letting it really upset me. Like they were just treating me like their servant. They didn't even care enough to put their t-shirt right side out and all of their socks were inside out, right? I don't know why, but I really let that get to me. And I nagged at those boys for probably several years about that. Not every day, obviously, but okay, it's just like same thing with the husbands. It's the same thing with your kids. Again, it's not like I'm trying to let them get by with everything. I know they need to learn. I tried to make sure they kept their rooms clean. You have to choose your own battles, obviously. But there are just so many battles that are really not worth fighting. And I can attest to the fact that if you let go of that and just say, you know what, I'm just going to turn the sleeves right side out when I wash their clothes. When they're older, they wash their own clothes, much older. And some people don't even care, but I'm just funny. Pants have to be zipped up, snapped. They just wash better that way, in my opinion. And so when I let go of that, of course, they were thrilled, but I was thrilled too because I just decided it's not worth it. What is a big deal? What do I care? And what I was going to say, I can attest to the fact that you can still have wonderful kids. I think my boys are pretty nice. They're not like snobby little come in the house and start throwing stuff around, expect some servant to pick it up. And that was my thought many years ago. Well, they don't need to take advantage of me, blah, blah. It's okay. There's a lot of things you can let go of and it's still okay. So that was a long, silly example, but it's not really silly because it can help save your sanity, I'm telling you.
So good and so true. I love this that you have shared. And just like being on here, you've been so open. And that is one thing that we love about you is you're open with your life and with social media. And I know that you've helped so many people because you've helped me so many
No,
times with being open on your life's journey, especially talking about towards the end of your husband's life. It was just such an example for all of us. And you talked about having joy and having letting go of things, but how have you learned to find joy in every stage of your life and talking about that contentment to be content no matter what?
That's a great ending question. One thing is, I've had people say, oh, it's just amazing, Sister Copeland, you've never questioned God and all of this that your husband went through. And there's nothing wrong with questioning God. When you have a good relationship with Him, you should be able to, if you're going through something, you want to say, hey, God, you know what? I don't get this. Why am I, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just never did because I just felt like it wasn't my place. Of course, there's a lot of well-meaning people. Most people have been wonderful, such a blessing and so encouraging to me and sending little texts and prayers and all sorts of things. Even now, I have preacher friends now sometimes text me a photo of when they're in the sanctuary. It's something cool that some of them do and take a picture of wherever they are in the sanctuary and say, praying for you right now. So that means a lot to me. But the thing is, I just never felt that it was my place to say what God should do and shouldn't do. I did have some people say that my husband was going to be healed. And I had several other things that were very difficult for me to go through because they were false prophecies about my husband, even about his condition and things like that. And it was just really a hard deal. But one of the things was just people would say, God can't take him. We need him. But my thinking is, who are we to say who God needs or who needs what? Yeah, sure. I feel I need him. My kids need him. I know I felt for a long time just going through all the grief process, which I'm still in the middle of, but sometimes I would just cry. And I suppose this is the one time I questioned God, although not out loud to him, but of course he knows our thoughts. But I would just think, man, why didn't he take me instead of my husband? Because I felt like that my boys needed my husband more than they would ever need me. Like they needed me all their years growing up, right? They needed their dad too, no question. But now in all these years, now they're men, I just felt like they need their dad. If they can only have one, I'm the one that should have gone. I really dealt with that, but I still didn't really question God because I just feel like when you're in God's hands and you're living for God, that's just what our life is. And we just have to accept it. And my sweet friend, Sister Prado, nobody can explain that. I told her there's nobody that's going to have an answer for that. We sure feel like we needed him. But who are we to say we need him more than God felt like it was time to bring him home? We'll never understand some things until we make it to the other side. To spend any energy on that kind of thing, that's just never been my deal. Yeah, I've been heartbroken. It's just been horrible, but I just haven't questioned God in it. And I have been content. And another thing is, it is true if you stay busy and you have a good support network, which I certainly do with my children, my friends, my church family, that's a big deal. That makes a big difference. Whoever's listening to this, if you're not in a position where you have a good church family, there are some people I'm assuming that might listen to your podcast that might not even be serving the Lord. And I would say that's number one. You're never going to find that contentment if you're not back in that relationship with God or in a relationship with God and in the house of God with the family of God. I couldn't have made it without my family, but also the family of God. And this is a minor thing too, Sister Jamie, and I'd forgotten that I had told you I was going to mention this. This is not the big deal, but it is something that really helped me through these last years is when I was 18, I and graduated from high school, I went to the University of Denver and I was on a music scholarship at that time as a brand new convert. And I loved it, worked very hard at it. But I spent a lot of time at church too because I loved it. I was a brand new convert. Anyway, long story short, I met and fell in love with this young evangelist named Tim Copeland, and that changed everything. So I quit college, but I made a promise to myself that one day I would go back and get my bachelor's. And I knew it probably wouldn't be in music, which at that time it was. I didn't know what it would be in. So fast forward, my husband was diagnosed with the frontotemporal dementia, as I shared, in November of 2019. In January of 2020, I started back at college because there was just something in me that just said, if you're ever going to do it, you might as well do it because things are not going to get better for a long time. I knew they wouldn't. I knew they were only going to get worse. It's not that I didn't have faith. I still prayed for healing every day, but I pretty well knew what the future held. And so I knew that I would be at home. I really feel like besides God that kept my sanity and my friends, my family, also being back in school made a huge difference for me because I had to be so focused on it. Now, of course, in 2020, everything was online. But then when we were able to go back in class, by that time, we had someone helping us, a wonderful preacher friend of ours, Brother Pound, who came in 5 hours a day. He sat with my husband, took him to Waffle House, all that when my husband was still able to do some of those things. So I was able to actually go to in-person classes at that time. It helped keep my sanity. There were so many times I wanted to break down. And of course, I did break down 1,000 times, but a lot of other times I couldn't because I had a paper due the next day. So I had to be so focused. And I really feel like it helped keep my sanity. So I'm going to school now. I'm only taking 2 classes this semester, but I probably won't have my bachelor's for another 1.5 to 2 years because I've been doing it very slowly. But my point is, you're never too old to pursue some of your dreams and to stay busy and to be happy. It's hard to be happy if you're not busy to a certain extent. It's just so easy to get depressed. But when you get out and do things, you meet people and you get to witness to them. And we have a wonderful thing going on right now with one of my husband's best caregivers when he was in memory care at a memory care facility the last year of his life. One of his main nurses, her name's Star. I mean, it was constantly preachers coming in and out that came from across the country, across the world, actually, to come see my husband and pray with him and give him a hug and all those things, even when he was completely bedbound and didn't know hardly anybody. They were still coming. And it just blew these nurses out of the water. They're like, who is this man that these people, all these guys in suits come? And of course, our church people would come. But through that, we had so many opportunities to tell people about God. So many. I just can't even tell you how many cool things happened throughout that tragedy. But anyway, Star, this main caregiver for my husband, she's been coming to church for probably 4 or 5 months now, faithfully. She was baptized about a month ago. I absolutely know she's going to get the Holy Ghost. And I know my husband, I feel like he's smiling about it because he was an incredible soul winner. He just loved people. And I just feel like his legacy, his ministry is living on through things like this. So anyway, all those things can bring such peace and joy to you when you're involved in the work of God and just when you're busy doing things, pursuing some of your own dreams. It's a great feeling, and God's been really good to me.
This has been wonderful that you have done this. Thank you so much for being on here. I knew that it would be an awesome podcast, and it absolutely has been. It's been a lot of fun, which is exactly what you are. But would you leave some last thoughts for the Unashamedly You community?
Oh, sure. I think really a little bit more of what I was just saying. And that's what I love about your podcast. That's what I was trying to say in the very beginning, that not only does this bring people closer together, but it's just so inspiring. Like when I hear someone talk about how they're doing this with their life or sharing some things with you, it makes me want to be a better person. So I would just encourage your listeners, stay in church, live for God, all these basic things, but follow your dreams. Just make sure your dreams are in line with the Word of God. I hope someday to be a Spanish translator. I'm a Spanish major. Es muy difícil. It's very difficult porque tengo una cerebra vieja. I have a very old brain. But it's really limitless when you have God. When you have God and the family of God, and you keep your prayer life intact, which I know anybody from your church has been taught about prayer, and we have too. My husband was very prayerful. Thank God, my pastor now, my oldest son, is very prayerful. All these things can come together in your life, and just learn to be happy in these things and to practice contentment and gratefulness.
So good. You've given us so many things to chew on, so many things that we can look back on and know that honestly, every situation that we are in, just to be content. That's one of the main things that I have learned from this podcast today. And I appreciate you being on here so much.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.
Wow. What a way to end the month of February with such an amazing episode. Remember, if this podcast has blessed or helped you in any way, please share with your friends and family. Give us a shout out over on social media, and be sure to leave a review on Apple and Spotify. Your encouragement in this space means more than you will ever know. Let's continue to encourage one another together. Go be unashamedly you.